"Don't embarrass me," my sister hissed into the phone, her voice carrying that familiar, condescending tone that lashed my cheek like a Finn whip. "Derek works at Nexara AI. His colleagues are going to dinner. I need you to just keep your head down. Can you do that just once?" I sat in my apartment looking out at the San Francisco skyline melting into an amber sunset. The cold coffee in my hand tasted bitter. "Of course, Amanda, I can keep my head down." Her voice sounded flat, like a flattened coin. "Okay, and for heaven's sake, don't bring up your startup. No one wants to hear about another failed tech venture." I didn't answer. My whole life, all 32 years, Amanda had been older, wiser, more correct. I was stuck in her mind like a perpetual teenager in a coffee-stained t-shirt, rummaging through wires in a dusty garage. No facts could penetrate that armor, and her concern burned more than any outright disdain. "Are you listening?" "I'm listening." 7 o'clock, prospect, and put on something decent. These people matter. She hung up. I looked down at my laptop where 3 emails glowed in my inbox. 3 takeover offers, each worth over $800 million. Our team had just closed a funding round that the venture press was whispering about, and on the desk lay printed materials for tomorrow's meeting, an entry into the European market, a valuation of $2 billion. But to her, I was nothing more than a quiet embarrassment to be hidden away. I arrived at Prospect early. This temple of wagyu and ferns, where the fate of industry was decided at dark oak tables. I knew every corner here, every wine on the list. Usually, I was in a position of strength here. Today, I was the ballast passenger, the wife's sister. Amanda noticed me instantly. Her lightning-fast gaze swept over my black trousers and silk blouse, and I saw her lips tighten for a second. Could have been better. "You're here," she said, touching her cheek to the air near my face. "Derek's running late, an important meeting." "Of course," I nodded. We sat down. Amanda nervously fiddled with her napkin, her fingers giving everything away. She was always so afraid of the wrong place, the wrong people, the wrong impression. "So," she asked, looking past me, "how's the job search going?" "I'm not looking for a job." "Right, your startup. How's it going? Still you and a couple of guys in the garage?" Something sharp and caustic rose in my throat. I took a sip of ice water. "Something like that. You know, Derek says Nexar is always hiring, maybe in marketing. Entry level, but it's a chance." Her voice sounded like slow torture. "That's very kind of you," I squeezed out. And there he was, Derek, with his entourage, an expensive suit, a confident smile, a handshake with an air of authority. His colleagues were just as polished by success, exuding expensive perfume and their own grandeur. "Everyone, this is my sister Maya," Amanda squealed with pride, as if she were presenting a rare but flawed specimen. "Maya is currently searching for herself," she continued, shrieking, and I felt myself shrinking inside, becoming small and insignificant. And then the torrent began. Quarterly plans, roadmaps, contracts with giants. Derek talked about a revolution in corporate AI, about a brilliant CEO leading them to an IPO. "We're crowding out small startups," one of his colleagues remarked with a slight chuckle. "They're cute, but they don't understand the market. They're doomed." Amanda gave me a panicked look. "Don't say anything." And I remained silent, smiled, nodded. A backdrop against which their importance blossomed. Derek's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and his face became solemnly serious. "CEO, emergency board meeting on Monday. All executives are required to attend. She doesn't stand on ceremony." "Her?" I repeated automatically. "Yes, our CEO, the Iron Lady. If she calls, something big is coming." At the end of dinner, Amanda walked me to the exit, to the valet stand. "Thank you for behaving properly," she breathed. "His career is so important right now." She took my elbow. "I know you don't understand it, but impressions are everything. That's where the real future is built. Stability, not your lottery." The valet brought my car, a good old Tesla, bought with my first big check from a client. Amanda ignored it. She'd long since decided I was renting it for show. "See you at my parents'?" she asked. "See you." I drove home through the night city, taking familiar turns, past skyscrapers where the fates of millions were decided, past coffee shops where ideas were born that revolutionized the market, past that very garage where, 7 years ago, 2 other garage guys and I decided we could change the rules of the game. 7 years. 7 long years, scorched by adrenaline, sleepless nights, and boundless faith. That's how long it's been since I, a 23-year-old girl with shining eyes, quit my prestigious job at Google to found Nexara AI. Yes, that same Nexara. That company Derek spoke of with such reverent awe at dinner. That very fortress that Amanda considered too high and impenetrable for her perpetually out-of-step sister. The 3 of us started out in a garage that smelled of mold and dust. We lived on noodles and dreams, slept on old mattresses, drank cheap coffee, and believed in the impossible. The first check from an angel investor felt like the fortune of Croesus. Then came the rounds, each of which I fought to win, proving that this fragile girl could lead an army of engineers. We grew. From 3 crazy people, we became 30, then 300, and now there are almost 900. From one idea, an entire ecosystem of game-changing products. And all this time, I kept silent. Not because I wanted to deceive, it's just that they, Mom, Dad, Amanda, never really asked. Their questions were rhetorical, their advice like ready-made scenarios for someone else. My father looked at me with pity. "Well, at least you're working on computers on the side." My mother defended herself to the neighbors. She's creative, searching for herself. And Amanda? Amanda had constructed an entire reality for me where I was a perpetual loser, and my silence was a brick in the wall of that reality. I was tired of trying to crack it. It was easier to nod. But Monday? Monday was supposed to change everything. I spent Sunday immersed in numbers and strategies. The board meeting was no ordinary one. We were deciding the company's fate. An IPO with Goldman Sachs, a push into Europe, an acquisition of competitors. The fates of 847 people who had entrusted their careers to me and millions of users around the world lay on the table in the form of graphs and reports. The list of attendees, approved by my assistant Jennifer, included the name of Derek Chin, VP of Product. He worked for us for 3 months. His team did the hiring, and I only briefly attended the final interview. He was so nervous, catching the COO's eye, that he didn't even remember my face. And I wasn't even trying to be memorable. To him, I was just another interviewer, a silent extra. The idea of connecting me, Maya, his wife's sister, with the CEO of Nexara AI never even crossed his mind, just like it didn't cross Amanda's. Monday morning greeted me with a cool fog clinging to the glass of the skyscrapers. I donned my battle suit, black, prim, and impeccable. The limo glided smoothly through the wet streets toward our 14-story glass and steel building, topped with a giant illuminated Nexara AI sign. My empire, my quiet revenge. The boardroom on the top floor filled with low, rich voices. Board members, investors, senior executives. Among the newcomers huddled at the far end of the table, I immediately spotted Derek. He looked composed, confident in his impeccable suit, quietly joking with a colleague. He was ready for a big day. But not this one. When I walked in and took my place at the head of the table, a silence fell over the room. I could feel it on my skin. A silence of attention, respect, and, somewhere, fear. "Good morning. Let's get started," my voice rang out clearly, filling the space. And that's when I saw it. I saw Derek's gaze flicker over me and then freeze. How his eyes, initially absent-minded, suddenly widened with incomprehension, which slowly, inexorably, turned into a chilling horror. He turned so pale that even under his tanned skin a sallow gray showed through. His fingers dug into the polished wood of the armrests. The COO, sitting next to him, leaned toward him and whispered something quietly. I couldn't hear the words, but from the sharp, almost convulsive jerk of Derek's shoulder, I understood. That's our CEO, Maya Chin." I didn't linger. I had work to do. The first question is the IPO timing. Patricia, your report. The CFO began reeling off numbers that sounded like a financial hymn to our success. Revenue, profit, forecasts. A valuation of over $2 billion. I listened, asked pointed questions, argued. This was my world. Here, I was queen. Derek didn't utter a word the entire time. He was a statue, a sculpture of a man buried under the rubble of his own delusion. His gaze, fixed on me, burned my cheek, but I didn't turn around. We discussed Europe. The plan was bold, expensive, and flawless. "Are we ready for GDPR?" I asked, looking at the CTO. "Absolutely." "Then I'm in." Hands went up unanimously. The decision was made. We're going to conquer a new continent. And finally, the question of the acquisition. Two small companies struggling for survival. Our chief legal officer laid out the options. Buy now or wait for the collapse and poach the teams. "It's better economically to wait," he concluded. I glanced around the table, feeling the weight of the next decision. I asked quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear, especially that petrified figure at the end. What would be the ethical move? A heavy, thick silence fell over the room. Not the silence of boredom, but the silence of a moral dilemma. It was the same silence I once felt in my mentor's office at Google when he said, "Numbers are the lifeblood of business, Maya, but its soul is how you get them." "The ethical thing is to buy them," Patricia finally said, her words slow and clear, like nails being driven into a wall of principles. "Even if it costs more. Preserve the teams, the technology, the spark that ignited them." "Agreed," I responded, feeling something inside me tighten, not from pain, but from a strange relief. "Prepare a generous offer. These people have created something worthwhile. The market may have made a mistake, but we haven't." The meeting lasted another hour. They talked about deadlines, threats, plans. Derek's team reported on the new model. The work had been high quality, fundamental. A pathetic coward, but not incompetent, I thought, with cold, detached regret. When it was over and people began to leave, Derek trudged slowly toward me, like a condemned man. His confidence, the same one he'd radiated during dinner, had evaporated, leaving only a gray tremor in his knees. "Miss Chin," his voice broke into a croak. "I had no idea." "Most people don't know." My tone was even, as if I were commenting on the weather. "You're doing a good job. The model is ahead of schedule." "Thank you. He swallowed. "Amanda. She mentioned you, said you were searching for yourself." A ghost of a smile, devoid of any warmth, flickered across my lips. "Amanda has her own perspective. I don't dispute it." "But you built all of this." "Not alone. It's always a team effort." He wanted to say something else, but Marcus interrupted him. Derek gave me one last look of silent horror and trudged away, his shoulders, once so proud, now hunched under an invisible weight. In the office, I finally looked at my phone. 15 missed calls from the same number, and 12 messages burning on the screen like hot coals. "Call urgently." "Maya, what the hell? Derek said you're the CEO." Why was I the last to know? My parents are shocked. It's unbearably humiliating. How could you stay silent while I bragged about his career? Everyone at that dinner now thinks I'm an idiot. How could you do that? Call me back immediately. I put the phone aside and stared out the window. Somewhere in the city, Amanda was probably pacing the living room, taking out her anger and resentment on her husband. Derek was replaying every moment of our time at Prospect, shaking with horror. And I felt nothing. No sweet triumph, no anger, just a dull, tired emptiness, as if none of this was happening to me. Jennifer knocked on the door. "The Goldman Sachs IPO team has arrived." "Thank you." I stood up and ran my hands over my jacket, smoothing out non-existent creases. There was work, There was an IPO. There was a company demanding decisions. The phone vibrated again. The 16th ring. I turned it off and walked out into the hallway. The rest of the day flew by in a whirlwind of numbers and tough negotiations. The Goldman bankers were as persistent as hungry piranhas. AI was a hot topic, and the story of a female founder was the perfect foil. Second quarter, their boss pressed. The market is hungry for stories like that. I'm selling a business, not a fairy tale, I retorted. But somewhere deep down, I knew they were the same thing to them. By 4 o'clock, my head was pounding with fatigue. Jennifer was at the door again. 17 missed calls from my sister, and my mom called the family number. She asked me to tell you that family is more important than your meetings. I closed my eyes. And what did you say? That you were at a meeting with Goldman about an IPO. She asked what that was. I explained. There was silence on the other end, and she hung up. The corner of my mouth twitched. Derek Chin is also requesting an audience. He seems panicked. Schedule it for tomorrow, 2 o'clock. That evening, I returned to my apartment in Pacific Heights. Bright, spacious, bought with the proceeds from my Series C. A good place for a successful professional. Not for a CEO on the brink of going public. After pouring some wine, I finally turned on the phone. 43 calls, 37 messages, 6 voicemails. I started with the voicemails. The first is Amanda, her voice shrieking with incomprehension. Maya, what's going on? Derek said, "You're his boss? Call me back." The second is Mom, confused and frightened. Honey, Amanda said something about some company. Is it true? Why didn't you say anything? Dad is distraught. The third is Amanda again, sobbing. You made me look like a complete fool. You listened to him bragging, and you kept quiet. How could you? The fourth is Dad, dignified and stunned. Mom says you have a big business. We don't understand why you lied to us. Explain. The fifth is Derek, choked and obsequious. Miss Chin, I deeply apologize for any unintentional offense. I, of course, had no idea. I hope this doesn't affect my position. And the sixth, Amanda, with a cold, cutting steel in her voice. You know what? This is the height of selfishness. You always have to be the center of attention. You couldn't give me one evening. Don't bother calling back. I deleted everything, one by one, and scrolled through the texts. The same path. Shock, tears, anger, accusations. Every word a brick in the very wall they'd been building for years. Only now did they realize that wall wasn't built around me. It was shielding them from the truth. As I scrolled through the messages, I literally felt the whirlwind of other people's emotions crashing through the screen on my skin. Mom, how could you not tell me? We're your parents. We would have supported you. A lie. They would have panicked. They always panic before what they don't understand. Dad, I'm confused, daughter. Why such a secret? We thought you were in trouble. Trouble is something he could understand. Success, something he can't measure, terrifies him. Amanda, everyone knows now. That whole dinner, his boss called. It's torture. I've never been so humiliated. And that was the main thing. Not my life, not the truth, but her humiliation. And then, amidst this torrent of venom, one message from her, sent late at night, stood out for its icy calm. Derek's boss wants to meet. Said he didn't know the CEO was my sister. Called me Miss Chin, like I was a big shot now, thanks to you. Everything's turned upside down, and it should have been me. There it was. It rang. Catharsis. Not proud of you or sorry, but it should have been me. In her worldview, success is a pie, and if I got a big piece of it, then it was stolen from her. My victory automatically made her a loser, and that thought burned inside her more than anything else. I didn't call anyone back. Not that evening. Instead, I buried myself in reports, numbers, and charts for the upcoming IPO. It was a world I understood, a world where I could breathe deeply, a world where no one tried to squeeze me into someone else's cramped, ugly, and uncomfortable uniform of family failure. On Tuesday morning, the office greeted me with its familiar, soothing silence. At 8:30, there was a senior management meeting. Derek was there. He was collected and polite, but his eyes, when they found their way for a second, showed a visceral fear. He did his job impeccably, but his every gesture screamed, "Don't fire me." After the meeting, Marcus, my COO, gently held me back at the door. "Derek's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He's sure you'll throw him out in disgrace. His KPI is above plan. Why?" "Well, you know, your sister, that dinner. He feels like an idiot. His personal life is none of my business." "Maybe you should tell him yourself? He's already spilled his third cup of coffee on the keyboard. His hands are shaking." I sighed, feeling irritation rising in my throat. I'd had to calm my vice president down because of a family drama in which I was the main monster. "Okay, we'll talk at 2. Derek walked in at exactly 2 p.m. He was pale, with purple shadows under his eyes. His hands, clasped in his lap, were white at the knuckles. "Thank you for taking the time, Ms. Chin. Maya, and I'm not going to fire you. Relax." A muffled, almost moaning sound of relief escaped him. He seemed on the verge of tears. "Oh, God, thank you. I didn't know what to think. The situation with Amanda—" "Your work is impeccable," I interrupted him, preventing him from descending into excuses. "The model is ahead of schedule and under budget. You're in the right place." He nodded, swallowing, but the tension in his shoulders didn't ease. "But I still owe you an apology for that dinner, for talking about startups, about—" "You didn't know, and you were right about one thing. Most startups fail. We were just lucky." He allowed himself a weak, forced smile, but his eyes grew serious again. "Amanda, she's very devastated. She feels disgraced." "I understand. She wants to know why you kept quiet." He paused, choosing his words. "And frankly, I'm curious too. A billion-dollar company, an IPO. How can you hide something like that from your family?" I looked at him, this frightened, intelligent man who suddenly found himself at the epicenter of our family tsunami. What was he to me? An employee and a potential spy. "They didn't ask, Derek," I finally said, my voice weary. And when I tried to speak, they didn't hear me. My father steered the conversation toward the weather. My mother frantically searched for job openings for me. Amanda formed an image of me at 23 and has only reinforced it ever since. Fighting it was like banging your head against a concrete wall. At some point, you just stop banging your head. But when the company grew, news came out. "What does Amanda tell you about me?" I asked directly, looking him in the eye. He looked away, embarrassed. "That you're finding your way, that you've had difficulties, that she's worried about you. And in 3 months, you haven't asked once? You haven't asked what my garage project is called? Where I went to school? What do I do for a living?" "She said you don't like to talk about it," he muttered, and for the first time doubt crept into his voice. "Because she didn't need answers, Derek. She needed a picture that suited her, and if the truth destroys her, then the truth is the enemy." He was silent for a long time, digesting it. Then he sighed. "She called today. She blames me for bringing her here, to your circus. She can't understand how I didn't guess." "And?" "I said I didn't know, that to me, you were just Maya, another pair of eyes in a crowded room." He ran a hand over his face tiredly, like an old man. "She said I choose you over her." The words hung in the heavy, musty air of the office. "And you?" "I said she wasn't acting like an adult, that you were my employer and I valued that position, that her grievances against me had nothing to do with her." He looked at me, and there was a new, bitter clarity in his gaze. "She didn't like that, of course. I have no doubt. She demanded that I resign." The silence thickened, became palpable. "And what did you decide?" I asked, almost already knowing the answer. "No." He straightened up, and a firmness I hadn't noticed before appeared in his posture. "This is the best chance of my career. This is why I came here. He paused as if stepping over some invisible line. And I began to see things in Amanda I don't like. I didn't assent, didn't push, I just waited. She's obsessed with status. Everything for her is a competition to be higher. I thought it was a healthy ambition, but now, he shook his head. The way she talks about you, the way she's more concerned with her own embarrassment than with the life you've actually lived, that's not what I want. Yes, I silently agreed, feeling something in my chest break with a quiet, sad crunch. Not triumph, not a joy, just a statement of a long-known fact. I stood and walked to the window, turning away from his searching gaze. Down below, 14 floors below me, life was bustling. Tiny figures hurrying about their business, getting coffee, laughing, arguing by the taxi. Ordinary people with ordinary worries. Not with billion-dollar valuations and sisters who see in you only the shadow of their own fears. My advice to you as CEO, I said, still looking into the distance, is don't ruin your career over personal dramas. You're doing well here. Stay. And what about Amanda's sister? What would she advise? His question hung in the air, sharp and awkward. It's better not to ask me that. I turned around, meeting his gaze. His eyes held the confusion of a man who had just discovered he was standing not on solid ground, but on the shifting sand of someone else's lies. But just in case, my sister is terrified of being ordinary. She's spent her whole life trying to prove she's an exception, that she's more important, smarter, more significant. That's why she needs you, impressive, with a brilliant career. And that's why she needs me, the eternal loser. They're two sides of the same coin, her story, where she's the undisputed heroine. Derek nodded slowly, as if piecing together the disparate pieces of my behavior, Amanda's words, and the strange, oppressive atmosphere in their relationship. So what now? It's simple. You work, I work. And Amanda has to decide if she can survive the cognitive dissonance of finding out her loser sister is her own boss. I returned to my desk and picked up a pen, a simple, polished object, a symbol of control. Any more questions about work? No, thank you, Maya. After he left, a resounding silence fell over the office, unable to be filled even by the familiar hum of the city. I picked up the phone. My fingers found the number on their own. Mom answered instantly, as if she'd been manning the line. Maya? Hi, Mom. You have something to say, young lady? Young lady. At 32, standing on the threshold of a stock exchange listing. A bitter smile caught in my throat. What exactly do you want to hear? At least an explanation of why we, your parents, learned from Amanda that you're the captain of some billion-dollar ship. I'm the founder and CEO. The company's pre-IPO valuation is around $2.2 billion. The silence on the line grew thick, almost palpable. Then a rustling sound. Muffled voices. Your father wants to talk to you. Here. Maya, it's your father. His voice sounded formal and embarrassed, as if he were speaking to a stranger. Mom and I are completely baffled. We thought you had a small computer project. It was small 7 years ago. We grew up. Why haven't you said anything? I told you. Remember Christmas dinner 4 years ago? I said we closed a $50 million round. You interrupted me with a question about your golf clubs. I don't remember. I do, word for word. Then you started telling me how Amanda got an office with a window. Silence. Heavy. Oppressive. We're your parents. We had a right to know. My voice grew weaker. Really? My voice wavered, but I pulled myself together. When was the last time you asked me not, how are you, but what are you doing, specifically, in detail? We're always interested. You ask Amanda. You ask her if I've found a normal job. You worry about when I'll find myself. But you've never asked me, out loud, directly. My mother's voice growled in the background. Let me! Maya, we're just trying to understand. Her tone was hurt. Vulnerable. Why did you have to make a secret out of it? There was no secret, Mom. There was a wall. You built it yourself. You decided who I was when I was 20, and you've only reinforced that version ever since. Everything I said crashed against it. It's cruel and unfair. Really? When was the last time you introduced me to someone without a preliminary apology? Without that eternal caveat, she's creative, still finding her way. We tried to support you. You were maintaining an illusion that suited you. Where Amanda is a role model, and I'm an eternal problem that needs to be solved. This story suited you. It was simple and understandable. My mother's voice became cold and thin, like a blade. You're saying terrible things right now. I'm saying what's been silent inside me for years. Amanda is hysterical, not because I humiliated her, but because her own story has crumbled, and she's afraid to admit it, even to herself. She says you embarrassed her in front of important people. I sat and listened to her boyfriend gush about the company I created, while she portrayed me as a lost lamb. Where is my shame in that? What is my fault? You should have told her. She didn't ask, I blurted out, and the scream left my throat raw. In our entire lives, she never really asked. Not once. She didn't want me. She wanted her version of me. And you both encouraged it. You admired her position at the bank while I was raising hundreds of millions. You bragged about her salary when I was turning down takeover offers. You saw what you wanted to see because the truth was inconvenient. It was shattering your neat little world. I heard my father muttering something on the other end, confused. What is she saying? Came his voice. She's saying that we let her down. My mother's voice broke, and tears mingled with it. That we didn't see it. Because we didn't try, I said more quietly, no longer angry. Suddenly, all the rage vanished, leaving only an icy, bottomless weariness. It was easier for you with one clearly successful daughter and one perpetually troubled one. That relieved you of responsibility. For both. My mother began to cry openly, sobbing into the phone. We didn't mean to. We didn't think. I know. But not knowing doesn't make it any easier. What should we do now? Her question sounded childishly helpless. I don't know, Mom. That's up to you. All of you. I hung up. The silence in the office no longer seemed empty, but thick, filled with the echoes of that difficult, hopeless conversation. Behind the glass wall, the life of my company was in full swing. Engineers argued at whiteboards, managers plotted charts, assistants brought coffee. These people knew me, respected me, seen me. My own blood saw only a ghost. Jennifer knocked carefully and entered, her face professionally impassive. Maya, you've got an interview coming. TechCrunch. Ready to tell the world about our IPO? Yes, I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. Give me a minute. I took a deep breath, shaking off the residual tremors from my conversation with my mother. A draft of the letter was burning on the screen in front of me, the very same pitch to the company about the IPO that I'd been poring over for weeks. It contained numbers, thanks, a vision for the future. It was sound, but now it seemed flat, lacking the essence. I scrolled down and began typing. The words flowed naturally, pouring out of the very wound that had just been exposed in the conversation. Many people know that I don't like publicity. I avoid the press and don't share my private life outside the office, because this company is built on substance, on code, on algorithms, on real solutions, not on pretty stories, on results, not on reputation, on teamwork, not on individual titles. But today I want to say this. Each of you is important not because of the title on your business card or your ability to shine at a social event. You are important because of the work you do here and now, the problems you solve, the value you create with your own hands. Never, listen, never let anyone make you feel less of yourself for choosing substance over flashy storytelling. I sent the email. All 847 recipients. And then, straightening my back and wiping the telltale moisture from the corners of my eyes, I went to meet with TechCrunch. to tell the world about the $2.2 billion company they've been ignoring for so long. The journalist, smart and trained, pressed for details, competitive advantages, roadmap, monetization. Is it difficult being a woman at the head of such a company in this industry, she asked, a tricky but predictable question. Being a CEO is difficult in itself, I retorted. Gender is just one of many variables in that equation. What advice would you give to other women in tech facing skepticism? Amanda's face, full of condescending regret, flashed before my eyes for a moment. My father's voice. That's sweet. My mother's gaze, searching for a problem in me, not potential. Keep building, I said clearly, looking straight into the camera. Let your work scream so loudly that it drowns out any doubts around you. And remember, if someone can't see you, it's their limitation, not your shortcoming. The article came out on Wednesday morning. By lunchtime, it was being shared everywhere. My phone, silent since Tuesday, exploded when I finally turned it on that evening. 127 missed calls, unrecognized numbers, recruiters, journalists, and 15 of them were from Amanda. I turned on the last voicemail. Her voice was different than before, not shrill, not angry, broken. Maya, I read the article. I saw photos of your office, of you. I didn't know. I knew you were smart, but I didn't understand the scale. A long, heavy silence. Derek left. He said, "You don't see people, you only see labels." He said he himself only saw me as a negative status symbol. She gave a false chuckle, and all her pain was in the sound. I don't know what to do with all this. Another pause, as if gathering her courage. The parents are panicking, and I realized I didn't know either, because I didn't want to. I'm sorry. I don't know if you need this, but I'm sorry. I saved the message, but I didn't call back. It wasn't time yet. On Thursday, we gathered everyone, all 847 of us. The hall was bursting with people standing in the aisles, watching the screens in the conference rooms. I walked onto the stage, and the hubbub died down. 7 years ago, there were 3 of us in a garage smelling of dust and madness. Today, we're going public. But remember, numbers are nothing. Not valuation, not share price. All that matters is that we've created something real, solving real problems, and we did it together. The roar of applause was deafening, physical. It pounded my chest, sweeping away the remnants of past pain. After the meeting, Derek came up to me. He looked calmer. Powerful speech. Thank you. I started seeing a therapist because of this whole Amanda thing. Turns out I have work to do, he smiled weakly. But I'm grateful for this work and for the clarity it's given me. I'm glad you're staying with us. Me too. On Friday late afternoon, when the crazy week was finally winding down, I dialed Amanda's number. She answered on the second ring. Maya, her voice was muffled, hoarse with tears. I got your message. That's it? A hint of old, panicked fear flashed in her tone. Just the last one. Silence. A deep, uneven breath on the other end. I've been thinking all week about what kind of sister I am, what kind of person I am. Her words flowed, halting and more sincere than ever. Derek was right. I don't see people, only their place on an invisible ladder in my head. You were supposed to be at the bottom, so I could feel superior. And when it turned out that wasn't the case, the world turned upside down. Amanda, let me... No, wait. I hated you for a week, for humiliating you, for keeping silent. But really, I hated myself, for being blind and deaf, for not wanting to see my own sister. I walked over to the panoramic window. The city below lit up, each one a life, a story. I reread every interview I could find about you, she continued, a hint of amazement in her voice. Forbes, TechCrunch, and I thought, oh my God, that's Maya, my little sister, and I don't know her. Yes, I confirmed quietly, you don't know. Can I, her voice became tiny, childish, can I get to know you, the real you? The question hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. I don't know, I answered honestly. Will you cope if the real me doesn't fit your categories? If I'm not someone you can be proud of? That's fair, she laughed bitterly. I'm a complete wreck. Derek left, my parents are depressed, and I discovered that my entire identity was built around being better than you. And now that structure is gone, and underneath it, there's emptiness. Maybe this is the beginning, I said softly. She paused again. I'm proud of you, she finally exhaled, and the words sounded so difficult, as if she were pulling them from the very depths, peeling away old layers of resentment and envy. I should have said it first. I'm proud and amazed. You built something incredible, right in front of everyone, while we weren't paying attention. It takes inhuman strength. A lump rose in my throat. I clutched the phone. Thank you. Let's grab some coffee sometime, if you have a break between world conquests, of course. Okay. Really? Hope flared in her voice, pure and unguarded. Really. But Amanda, I paused, choosing my words. If we're going to try, it has to be real. No scripts, no competition. Just two sisters, who might be meeting for the first time. I really want to try. Then let's try. We agreed to meet the following Tuesday. After finishing our conversation, I sat in the darkening office, the sunset slowly fading outside the window, and finally let the tears flow. They weren't loud sobs, but a quiet, long stream washing away years of pent-up bitterness. I cried for all those years when I was a ghost to them, for the sister who was there, but whom I never truly had. And, strangely, I cried from a weak, fragile hope, because perhaps right now, on the ruins of old lies, we can plant something real. On Monday, we officially filed for an IPO. By Wednesday, the date was set, June 15th. By Friday, Goldman Sachs analysts were predicting a valuation of $2.4 billion. But none of these numbers troubled my sleep as much as the upcoming coffee meeting. On Tuesday. We met in a small, nondescript coffee shop in North Beach, far from the glass towers of Soma. She had arrived early and was sitting by the window, nervously fiddling with a paper napkin. She looked tired, makeup-free, and therefore more human than I had seen her in 10 years. Hi, she said, her voice unwavering. Hi. We ordered. The silence between us wasn't hostile. It was awkward, like that between two people who just met and don't know anything in common. I don't know where to start, Amanda finally breathed, not looking up from her cup. Tell me about your work, not the press version, the real thing. The question caught me off guard. I expected reproaches, excuses, but not this. I manage a department of 5 in commercial lending for small businesses. She spoke slowly, as if tasting the words and finding them mild. It's routine, sometimes boring, but I'm good at it. It's useful, I remarked quietly. Small businesses need it. Yes, it's useful, but I'm not a vice president. I'm not changing the world. I'm just doing my job. That's how most people live, Amanda. There's nothing wrong with that. I know. She finally looked at me, and there was a painful clarity in her eyes. But I've been pretending for so long that it was more, pretending I was more than I really was, because I was afraid that if I wasn't more, then I was nothing. The words hung in the air, naked and terrifying. You were never anything, I said firmly. Never. Then why did I need you to be less? Why did I pray for your garage to fail? Because we were raised to believe that love must be earned, that our place in the family depends on our achievements. You simply learned that lesson better than me. I stirred my cold cappuccino. We were both held hostage. I just found another way out. How? Her voice rang with genuine childish curiosity. How did you continue when everyone around you kept telling you you'd fail? I found people who saw me, truly. My partners, my first investors, my team. Their faith became my shield. It became easier for me to ignore the fact that those who should have seen me first were blind. The tears she'd been holding back finally streamed down her cheeks. She didn't try to wipe them away. I want to be someone who sees. I want to see you, clearly. Then start with yourself, I said softly. See the real you, not who you think you should be, but who you are. We sat for over 2 hours. We talked about her boring but honest work, about her breakup with Derek and the painful but important truths he'd told her, about our parents who, without meaning to, had broken something in both of us, and about the strange, frightening possibility of starting over. As she left, she hugged me. Not the casual, detached air slap gesture, but a firm, real press of her cheek against my shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered in my ear, "for this chance. Thank you for asking for it." June 15th was a sunny, clear day, like summer. I stood on the NASDAQ floor next to Marcus and Jennifer, watching our ticker come to life. The opening price? $54. The company's valuation? $2.6 billion. The roar of applause was deafening. My parents stood off to the side, confused and quiet, trying to comprehend their daughter who had suddenly materialized before them on such an incredible scale. Amanda was there too. She didn't push forward, simply stood and applauded, and then posted a photo of the opening bell on Instagram. The caption read, "My sister is space." No qualifications, no "it turns out," just a statement of fact finally seen. After the ceremony, amidst the celebration of champagne and smiles, she pulled me into a relatively quiet corner. "I know it's your day, but I wanted to tell you, I found a therapist." I started sorting out this whole hierarchy in my head, the comparisons. "I'm proud of you," I said, and realized it was absolutely true. "And I'm proud of you," she waved her hand toward the noisy crowd, "for all of this, for building something real while I was constructing a house of cards out of fiction." "Your life isn't a house of cards, Amanda. It was just hidden behind the scenery." "Well, that scenery is over," she smiled, and it was a light, vulnerable smile. "I want a real life, starting with having a sister I know and who knows me. I want that too." We stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the numbers of our shared success flash by. 2 sisters, finally seeing each other for who they really are. The company grew. We expanded into Europe, acquired 2 unsuccessful competitors, and launched new products. By the end of the year, we had over 1,000 employees. But my greatest quiet pride wasn't the growth charts, awards, or stock market reports. It was the weekly Tuesdays over coffee with Amanda. It was the calls to my parents, where they stuttered through questions about my work and listened to the answers. It was the slow, painstaking work of building bridges where for years there had only been cliffs. Derek stayed. He became one of our best leaders, and from what I heard, he started dating a girl from the legal department, a quiet, smart woman who saw him as a person, not a status symbol. And I kept building, leading, choosing the essence, not the glossy wrapping. Because in the end, that's all that matters. Creating something real, seeing people clearly, and letting them see you. Everything else is just background noise that one day fades away, finally revealing a silence in which the beating of real hearts can be heard.